DIRK Bogarde was part of a new wave of actors who rose to prominence in the late 1940s and 1950s. Similar to Montgomery Clift and Francis DeLong, he exuded a brooding intensity and gravitated towards serious, intelligent roles. However, unlike Clift and DeLong, Hollywood rejected Bogarde, forcing him to forge a different path. The British actor pursued an unconventional career in European cinema, where he became one of the most respected and celebrated performers of the 20th century. Through his roles, he made significant political and social statements, all while leading a private life he never revealed publicly, knowing that Hollywood would expose his secrets. This is the story of the DIRK Bogarde. Sir DIRK Bogarde was born Derek Jules Gaspar, Ulrich Niven van den Bogaerde, on March 28, 1921 in Hampstead, a suburb of London. His father, R.R. van den Bogaerde, was the first art editor of the Times of London, while his mother, Margaret Niven, was an actress. He had two siblings, an older sister, Elizabeth, and a younger brother, Gareth. His father was of Flemish descent, and his mother was Scottish. The family lived in a cultured environment. DIRK's father established and led the art department at the Times, while his mother, the daughter of actor and painter Forrest Niven, had performed in the play Bunty Pulls the Strings before giving up acting at her husband's request. DIRK was raised in Sussex, primarily cared for by his sister Elizabeth and the family nanny. Bogarde attended Allen Glen's School in Glasgow and later London's University College School. He then studied commercial art at Chelsea Polytechnic, where he was taught by notable figures like Henry Moore. Though his mother hoped he would become an art critic for the Times, Bogarde abandoned his art studies to pursue acting. However, acting opportunities were scarce, and his early efforts showed little promise. In the 1930s, he worked as a commercial artist and scene designer. He began his acting career with the Amersham Repertory Company and made his stage debut in 1939 at the Kew Theatre in London, delivering just one line. Shortly after, he made his West End debut in J.B. Priestley's play, Cornelius. Around this time, he also appeared as an uncredited extra in the George Formby comedy, Come On George. Just as his career began to gain momentum, global events took a dramatic turn. In September 1939, Germany invaded Poland, followed by the Soviet Union 2 weeks later, and Britain soon entered World War II. In early 1904, Bogarde joined the Queen's Royal Regiment as an officer, earning the nickname Pip. Over 5 years of active service, he received 7 medals. During the war, he also wrote poetry and painted. One of his poems, Steel Cathedrals, was published in 1943 in a small magazine and later included in an anthology. His wartime paintings are now part of the Imperial War Museum's collection. Derek first served in the Royal Corps of Signals before being commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Queen's Royal Regiment. He later worked as an intelligence officer with Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery's 21st Army Group during the liberation of Europe. Following D-Day, he participated in photo reconnaissance, advancing through Normandy with units from the Royal Canadian Air Force. By July 1944, they were based at the Baked Airfield near Bayeux. As a captain and air photographic interpreter attached to the Second Army, Derek identified targets in France, Holland, and Germany for the 2nd Tactical Air Force and RAF Bomber Command. Strategic bombing of key villages along supply routes was carried out to block German armor from reaching the invasion zones. His intelligence efforts were vital to the Allies' progress. Although his days as a brave frontline soldier were behind him, DIRK Bogarde experienced many horrors as the Allied forces pushed the Germans back across France. He described one of the most shocking moments of the war. "I thought I saw a row of footballs in the rubble, but they weren't footballs, they were children's heads. A whole school of kids, from a convent, had been pulled out of class and lined up in a narrow alleyway between buildings to protect them from the bombing. The entire structure collapsed on top of them." Bogarde also shared that he was one of the first Allied officers to enter the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Germany on April 20, 1945. The experience deeply affected him, and he struggled to talk about it for years. He vividly described the scene. When the gates opened, I realized I was looking at Dante's Inferno. A girl approached me who spoke English. She recognized one of the badges. She had no top on, just a pair of men's prison pajamas, no hair, and her breasts were like empty purses. All around us were mountains of dead bodies, literal mountains. The horrors he witnessed left him with a lifelong resentment toward Germany. In the 1980s, he admitted that he would rather leave an elevator than share it with a German of his generation. Ironically, Bogard went on to play German characters in 3 of his most notable films, including a former SS officer in The Night Porter. Other wartime experiences tested his humanity. He recalled a harrowing moment during the liberation of France. I was a 24-year-old officer in Normandy when the jeep ahead of me hit a mine. Shortly after, I found a man lying in the long grass beside me, his voice gurgling as he said, "Help, kill me." My hands were shaking as I reached for my revolver and tried to load it, but by the time I found my bullets, someone else had already done it. I heard the shot. I still remember that gurgling voice, begging for death. This traumatic memory resurfaced later in his career when he portrayed a similar moment in the 1964 film King and Country, where his character is forced to carry out a similarly grim act. Reflecting on his wartime experiences, Bogard wrote, "Deep shock leaves a permanent mark, an internal tattoo that can only be removed by surgery. Time cannot simply wash it away." After being demobilized, he returned to acting. His agent suggested he drop Derek from his name, and he became DIRK Bogard, a name that would become famous within a decade. In 1947, he performed in Power Without Glory at the New Lindsay Theatre, earning praise from Noel Coward, who encouraged him to pursue acting further. Soon after, a talent scout from the Rank organization saw him in the play and signed him to a contract. He made his credited film debut in Dancing with Crime, playing a policeman with a single line. Later that year, Bogard landed his first leading role in a film. Wessex Films, distributed by Rank, cast him in The Sin of Esther Waters after Stuart Granger dropped out. This marked the beginning of a long-term contract with Rank, during which Bogard appeared in a variety of roles over the next 14 years. One of his early starring roles was in the 1949 film Once a Jolly Swagman, where he played a daring speedway racer for the Cobras. The film was shot at New Cross Speedway in southeast London during the post-war years, a time when speedway racing was the most popular spectator sport in the UK. DIRK Bogard's early career was shaped under the guidance of prolific independent film producer Betty Box, who played a key role in crafting his image as a matinee idol. For 3 years, Bogard worked as an apprentice actor in Rank Organization films, gaining little attention. His breakthrough came in 1950 when he was cast as young hoodlum Tom Riley in the crime thriller The Blue Lamp. The film, named after the blue lights on police call boxes in London, was the most successful British movie of that year and established Bogard as a notable actor. Playing a cop killer, a shocking crime in England at the time, Bogard's role brought both notoriety and popularity to the film. This character marked the beginning of his career portraying intense, neurotic, and charismatic villains. Over the next 3 years, Bogard took on a variety of roles, including an accidental murderer, a hunted young wing commander, and a wrongly imprisoned man who finds hope upon discovering his sweetheart, played by Mai Zetterling, is still alive. He also performed on stage, including a stint in the West End production of Jean Anouilh's Point of Departure. However, stage performances made him anxious, and his growing fame led to uncomfortable encounters with fans, who often mobbed him. Bogard became a major heartthrob, with one teenager, Olin Evans, winning a date with him through the Daily Mirror Teen Queen contest. Despite his public image as one of Britain's most eligible bachelors, Bogard was already in a private, long-term relationship, though this was unknown to the public. The pressures of fame and his struggles with stage fright began to take a toll. During a 1955 touring production of Summertime, he faced aggressive fans at the stage door, some even disrupting his performances. After a final stage appearance in the 1958 Oxford Playhouse production of Jezebel, Bogard decided to leave the theater, turning down lucrative offers to return. Around this time, he collaborated with American expatriate director Joseph Losey on The Sleeping Tiger. Losey, a communist blacklisted in Hollywood during the McCarthy era, had moved to England after refusing to direct an anti-communist film. Initially hesitant to work on a low-budget production with a blacklisted director, Bogard agreed after being persuaded by Losey, who showed him one of his earlier films. Bogard even accepted a reduced fee for the role, although Losey's name was omitted from the credits due to his blacklist status. This partnership would later result in a series of acclaimed films that became milestones in both their careers. Ironically, it was not drama, but comedy that propelled Bogard to stardom. His portrayal of Dr. Simon Sparrow in the 1954 comedy Doctor in the House launched him to the forefront of British cinema. The film, featuring Kenneth More, Donald Sinden, and James Robertson Justice as their gruff mentor, was spearheaded by Betty Box, who saw its potential after reading the source material on a train journey. Doctor in the House became a massive hit, drawing 17 million viewers in its first year and earning its place as one of Britain's most beloved films. Bogard's performance as Sparrow cemented his status as a national heartthrob and the leading British movie star of the mid-1950s. Bogard, nicknamed the idol of the audience for his box office appeal, was considered by producer Harry Saltzman and director Tony Richardson for the role of Jimmy Porter in Look Back in Anger. This play marked the start of the angry young man movement and the kitchen sink school of 1950s English drama. Bogard was also slated to play T.E. Lawrence in a film written by Reagan and directed by Anthony Asquith. However, after a year of preparation, the project was suddenly canceled due to budget issues, leaving Bogard and the team disheartened. After ending his contract with Rank, Bogard moved to Hollywood to star as Franz Liszt in Song Without End. The film was inspired by the 1945 success of A Song to Remember, which focused on Frédéric Chopin. Despite being announced in 1952 by studio head Harry Cohn, the project faced years of delays due to script revisions and censorship requirements. Initially, Oscar Saul was hired as the screenwriter, and William Dieterle was set to direct. However, after 3 years of production and casting delays, Saul left the project. In 1955, Columbia brought in Gottfried Reinhardt to create a new screenplay. By 1958, producer William Girdler took over and hired Oscar Millard as a screenwriter. Ultimately, Charles Vidor was chosen to direct, combining elements from all 3 writers' drafts. Even during filming, the script continued to be revised. Production finally began, but tragedy struck on June 4, 1959, when Vidor died of a heart attack. Bogard, frustrated with the troubled production, hoped the film would be canceled. The set had been tense, particularly for Capucine, a first-time actress who struggled under Vidor's harsh direction. However, George Cukor was brought in to finish the film, significantly improving morale. Cukor made several changes, including replacing cinematographer James Wong Howe with Charles Lang, altering costumes, and having Anna Lee dub over Patricia Morrison's dialogue. He also decided to abandon Liszt's iconic long hair, opting for a style inspired by Elvis Presley. Despite his extensive contributions, Cukor declined a directing credit, leaving it to Vidor, who had completed only 15% of the film before his death. Song Without End was praised for its musical elements and effective use of classical music. It won the Academy Award for Best Music Score, credited to Morris Stoloff and Harry Sukman, as well as the Golden Globe for Best Motion Picture Musical. Both Bogard and Capucine received Golden Globe nominations, and the film was named Best Film Musical at the 18th Golden Globe Awards. Despite these accolades, critics were unimpressed, and the film was a box office failure. During the filming of Song Without End, Dirk Bogarde developed a strong romantic interest in his French co-star, Capucine, and even expressed his desire to marry her. Like Bogard, Capucine was bisexual, though she leaned toward relationships with women and struggled with bipolar disorder. While their connection did not lead to marriage, it blossomed into a lifelong friendship. This was reportedly Bogard's only serious romantic relationship with a woman, though he maintained close friendships with many women, including Judy Garland, his co-star in I Could Go On Singing. The commercial and critical failure of Song Without End hurt Bogard's chances of becoming a leading man in Hollywood and plunged him into a period of depression. He also found the rapid transitions in his life from wartime to peace and then to sudden stardom difficult to handle, saying, "First there was the war, and then the peace to cope with, and then suddenly, I was a film star. It happened all too soon." In 1960, Bogard appeared in Nun Johnson's Spanish Civil War drama The Angel Wore Red, co-starring Ava Gardner. However, the film was criticized by New York Times critic Eugene Archer for failing to fully explore its religious themes, instead descending into a mass of inspirational sentimentality. Financially, the film was a disaster, grossing only $410,000 in the US and Canada and $525,000 internationally, resulting in a loss of $0.5 million. Bogard then returned to Rank Studios for The Singer Not the Song, a western centered on a love triangle involving a Mexican bandit, an Irish priest, and a teenage girl. Initially unenthusiastic about the project, Bogard became more interested when he heard the priest might be played by Richard Burton or Peter Finch. However, Rank insisted on casting John Mills, prompting Bogard to warn director Roy Ward Baker, "If John plays the priest, I will make life unbearable for everyone involved." The film was another commercial failure, but later gained a cult following for its campy homosexual undertones and Bogard's striking performance, particularly his flamboyant black leather trousers. Bogard next appeared alongside Alec Guinness in HMS Defiant, a British naval war drama set during the Spithead Mutiny of 1797. Adapted by Nigel Neal from Frank Tilsley's novel Mutiny and directed by Lewis Gilbert, the film was shot in CinemaScope and Technicolor and premiered at the Odeon Leicester Square in London on February 22, 1962. By the early 1960s, Bogard made the surprising decision to leave behind his successful mainstream career to focus on more challenging art house films. This decision shocked his fans, who expected him to return to Hollywood as a glamorous leading man. However, Bogard sought more meaningful roles that would push him as an actor. His next project, Victim, would become one of the most challenging and groundbreaking films in British cinema history. Directed by Basil Dearden, Victim was the first British film to sympathetically address the persecution of homosexuals. The black and white thriller centered on gay men being blackmailed under the threat of exposure and imprisonment. Released 6 years before the Sexual Offences Act decriminalized homosexuality, Victim tackled a highly controversial subject. At the time, societal attitudes were still shaped by the tragic conviction and death of Alan Turing less than a decade earlier, and the public downfall of Oscar Wilde 60 years prior. There was no guarantee that British audiences would accept such a bold and provocative film, but Victim ultimately became a landmark in cinematic history. The role of Farr was initially offered to Jack Hawkins, who declined. James Mason and Stuart Granger also rejected the role before it was finally offered to Dirk Bogarde by Earl St. John of Pinewood Studios. According to a letter from producer Michael Ralph to co-writer Janet Green, Bogard eagerly accepted the role despite the personal risks involved. The film would inevitably draw attention to his bachelor status and spark questions about his sexuality. Questions he couldn't answer truthfully without risking serious consequences. Notably, the film was the first British production to explicitly use the word homosexual. Before this, mentions of gay people in British cinema were limited to slurs. Victim is credited with helping pave the way for the eventual passage of the 1967 Sexual Offences Act, which decriminalized homosexuality in England. Lord Arran, who introduced the bill, later publicly thanked Bogard for his courage in taking on such a controversial and potentially damaging role. He remarked, "It is comforting to think that perhaps 1 million men are no longer living in fear." When the film was released in 1961, its subject matter was highly controversial, especially since Lord Beaverbrook, a powerful press baron and owner of several major newspapers, prohibited any positive discussion of homosexuality, even in film reviews. Despite this, Alexander Walker, lead film critic for the Evening Standard, ignored advice from his deputy editor to avoid the film. Instead, he praised Bogard's performance, writing, "At last, after years of playing shallow roles in lightweight films, Dirk Bogarde has a role that not only demonstrates his brilliance as an actor, but also his courage." Other critics echoed this acclaim, and Bogarde gained a new, more discerning audience. However, his choice to pursue deeper, more meaningful roles alienated many of his previous fans. Like Burt Lancaster, Bogarde was no longer interested in being a commercial movie star. He was committed to growing as an actor and an artist. In the US, Victim was not shown in mainstream theaters because the Production Code Administration refused to approve it due to its positive portrayal of homosexuality. Most theaters would not screen films without the PCA's seal of approval. Nevertheless, Bogarde was proud of the film and believed it played a role in changing public conversations about homosexuality. Although Bogarde publicly denied being gay during his career, he later admitted to having a long-term relationship with his manager, Anthony Forwood. The two first met in 1939, when Forwood was a theatrical manager. Forwood married and later divorced actress Glynis Johns before becoming not only Bogarde's manager, but also his life partner. In 1968, the couple moved to France, where they purchased and restored a 15th-century farmhouse near Grasse. Dirk Bogarde openly discussed his early sexual experiences with women and his close friendships with Kay Kendall and Judy Garland, but he remained silent about his relationship with Anthony Forwood. Bogarde hinted that clues about his private life could be found in his writings, famously saying, "If you've got your wits about you, you will know who I am." A 2001 British documentary, Arena, The Private Dirk Bogarde, produced with his family's blessing, confirmed that he and Forwood were devoted life partners. Beyond its societal impact, Victim marked a turning point in Bogarde's career, setting him on the path to becoming a mature actor. By age 40, many of his finest roles were still ahead. Though opportunities in Hollywood emerged, Bogarde chose not to pursue them, instead focusing on working with director Joseph Losey. In 1963, Losey's The Servant, with a script by Harold Pinter, showcased Bogarde's exceptional acting skills. The film delves into a power struggle between a wealthy man, Tony, played by James Fox, and his manipulative servant, Hugo Barrett, played by Bogarde. As the story unfolds, their relationship shifts, with Barrett ultimately dominating and destroying his master. When Lucy fell ill with pneumonia during production, he asked Bogarde to direct temporarily, which Bogarde agreed to for 10 days. However, he swore never to direct again. His performance in The Servant earned him the BAFTA Best Actor award. That same year, Bogarde appeared in the unusual and influential film The Mind Benders, directed by Basil Dearden. The movie, which inspired Ken Russell's Altered States, follows Professor Sharpie, suspected of Soviet espionage, who takes his own life. British intelligence believes guilt drove Sharpie to suicide, but Dr. Longman, a colleague, theorizes that sensory deprivation experiments may have made him vulnerable to brainwashing. To test the theory, Longman undergoes similar experiments, allowing an intelligence officer and another colleague to attempt brainwashing him against his wife. In 1964, Bogarde reunited with Losey for King and Country, set during World War I in 1917. Bogarde portrayed Captain Hargreaves, who defends Private Arthur Hamp, accused of desertion. Hamp is convicted, and though the court recommends mercy, the higher military command rejects this, seeking to boost morale by setting an example. Hamp is executed by firing squad. But when the shots fail to kill him outright, Hargreaves must finish him off with a revolver, a stark reminder of Bogarde's own wartime experiences. Bogarde joined forces with Losey and Pinter once more for 1967's Accident, an intense, tension-filled adaptation of Nicholas Mosley's 1965 novel. The story centers on Stephen, a married Oxford tutor in his 40s, who becomes infatuated with Anna, a mysterious Austrian student also desired by his wealthy, charming pupil, William. While Stephen's wife is away, he rekindles a romance in London. Upon returning, he discovers his colleague Charlie has been using his home for an affair with Anna. Anna subsequently reveals that she and William are engaged. That night, a drunk William and Anna crash their car near Stephen's gate. Stephen rescues Anna from the wreckage, but while she is still in shock, he assaults her before taking her back to her university accommodation. The next morning, Stephen encounters a confused Charlie, who is unable to stop Anna from packing her things to leave for Austria. The film initially baffled critics and was another financial failure. However, over time, its reputation has grown significantly. Despite their lack of immediate success, these films eventually gained critical acclaim and elevated Joseph Losey to the status of a major director. Bogart also appeared in Losey's 1966 spy parody Modesty Blaise, but the film did little to improve either of their reputations. Bogart later refused to act in Losey's The Assassination of Trotsky due to its poor script. In an interview with Michael Simon, Losey acknowledged that his collaborations with Bogart were crucial to both of their careers, admitting that his own success might not have been possible without Bogart's involvement. Bogart and Losey maintained a close friendship, frequently corresponding with each other and with Losey's wife, Patricia. Bogart's optimistic personality complemented Losey's more melancholic and pessimistic nature. In a postcard from Rome's Villa Berti, dated October 16, 1969, Bogart wrote, "Life isn't all that bad, Joseph. It can actually be fun if you try." Losey's films marked the beginning of Bogart's exploration of darker, more complex aspects of human nature. In 1965, Bogart co-starred with Julie Christie in John Schlesinger's Darling, a film that won Christie the Oscar for Best Actress and cemented her stardom in the 1960s. During filming, both actors awaited news about casting for David Lean's Dr. Zhivago. Christie was cast as Lara, but Bogart was not selected. By this point, Bogart was already being recognized as one of cinema's most important actors. He won his second Academy Award for Best Actor for his performance in Darling. Bogart went on to star in major films such as The Fixer, where his co-star Alan Bates earned a Best Actor nomination. He also appeared in two films by Luchino Visconti, The Damned in 1969 and Death in Venice in 1971. The latter, based on Thomas Mann's novella, was a role Bogart considered the crowning achievement of his career. His portrayal of Gustav von Aschenbach in Death in Venice, a character loosely inspired by Gustav Mahler, depicted a man lost and isolated, silently fixated on Tadzio, a young figure symbolizing beauty and youth. Bogart believed this performance was his finest and marked the conclusion of his illustrious career. Visconti's film adaptation introduces a disturbing sexual element to the protagonist's fixation, which becomes even more unsettling when considering the later struggles of Björn Andresen, the 14-year-old Swedish actor who portrayed Tadzio. Andresen's experiences are explored in the documentary The Most Beautiful Boy in the World, a title Visconti famously used to describe him during their appearance at the 1971 Cannes Film Festival. In the film's climax, Gustav von Aschenbach undergoes a grotesque transformation, with his face powdered white, lips painted rosy, and hair dyed jet black. He deteriorates while seated in a deck chair, a tear running down his face, a stark contrast to the clean-cut heartthrob who had once been a magazine sensation. Bogart fully immersed himself in his role and later expressed his deep nostalgia for both the film and his character. Reflecting on the experience, he told Visconti, "It seems incredible to me that the film is over only by a few weeks. I am very nostalgic for it, and for Gustav, and always for you." Visconti shared an anecdote about the American reaction to Death in Venice. After a Los Angeles screening, the room fell silent, which Visconti initially interpreted as a sign of profound impact. However, the silence was actually due to shock. A nervous studio executive eventually broke it by asking about the film's music. When Visconti explained that it was composed by Gustav Mahler, the executive enthusiastically replied, "Just great. I think we should sign him." The Damned, in contrast, is a provocative film about a wealthy German industrialist family navigating their relationship with the Nazis after their rise to power in 1933. The story centers on Martin, the perverse heir played by Helmut Berger, whose decadence and depravity mirror the moral collapse of German society during that time. The film received widespread acclaim, earning a nomination for Best Original Screenplay at the 42nd Academy Awards, and being named one of the top foreign films of 1969 by the National Board of Review. Helmut Berger was praised for his chilling portrayal of Martin, a ruthless sexual deviant who uses his depravity to achieve sinister goals. The film also performed well commercially, ranking as the 10th most popular release at the French box office in 1970. In the early 1970s, The Damned aired on CBS in heavily censored late-night broadcasts. A network executive jokingly suggested renaming it The Darn. Despite the cuts, it became the first X-rated film to air on American network television. After The Damned, Bogart appeared in only 7 films over the next 2 decades, frequently criticizing the poor quality of scripts he was offered. He turned to writing as an outlet for his creativity, lamenting how commercial failure overshadowed artistic success. "It is pointless to be superb in a commercial failure," he noted. "And most of the films I deliberately chose in the last few years were just that. Critics may have liked them, but distributors avoid what they call a critic's film, which often means the public will stay away. And if you don't make money at the box office, you're not asked back to play again." Despite this, Bogart's writings were well received by both critics and readers. Bogart eventually found a compelling script in The Night Porter, released in 1974 and directed by Liliana Cavani. The film again explored themes of National Socialism, this time set in 1957. Bogart played Max, a former Nazi officer living a quiet life as a night porter in a Viennese hotel. His past resurfaces when Lucia, a former concentration camp prisoner played by Charlotte Rampling, arrives at the hotel. The two rekindle their complex sadomasochistic relationship, which had begun in the camp. The film is charged with an unsettling intensity, as Lucia paradoxically finds meaning in her connection with Max. Both characters are unable to escape the haunting memories of their shared past, which binds them through mutual degradation. Cavani was deeply impressed by Bogart's performance in The Servant. When the chance arose to create her own film, she was determined to cast him. Speaking to the BBC, she said, "He gave a performance made of subtlety and skill, so when I was able to make my film, I wanted only him." Cavani visited Bogart at his home in France and immediately saw him as the perfect choice for Max. They spent the evening talking over dinner and a considerable amount of whiskey. By the next day, despite Bogart barely remembering their conversation, he agreed to take the role. Cavani later remarked, "Every actor has his own inner orchestra, a kind of expressive instrumentation that can be very rich, which she believed Bogart embodied." She credited both Bogart and Rampling with bringing the necessary depth to the controversial film, preventing it from becoming shallow or exploitative. Their performances elevated the movie into one of real intensity. While the film faced criticism for being offensive, particularly for its extended scenes of nudity involving Rampling, Bogart's performance received widespread acclaim. The film is now respected for its complex moral narrative rather than its explicit content. Bogart, who had witnessed the horrors of Bergen-Belsen, was drawn to exploring the darker sides of human nature in cinema. Reflecting on Bogart, Charlotte Rampling said in a documentary, "He was for me a good and great man, But he wasn't a goody-goody, that's for sure, adding with a smile. He was wicked. Bogarde's next role was as Lieutenant General Frederick Boy Browning in the star-studded epic A Bridge Too Far. Unlike his co-stars, Bogarde had first-hand experience of the events depicted in the film, and his performance was widely regarded as the standout of the movie. That same year, he appeared in Alain Resnais's critically acclaimed Providence alongside John Gielgud. In 1978, he starred in Rainer Werner Fassbinder's adaptation of Vladimir Nabokov's Despair, with a script by Tom Stoppard. Bogarde's portrayal of Hermann Herrmann, a 1930s German businessman spiraling into madness as fascism rose, was once again highly praised. Bogarde found working with Fassbinder particularly rewarding and noted similarities between Fassbinder and Luchino Visconti. Fassbinder, known for his fast-paced life and heavy drug use, tragically died in his 30s. An openly gay filmmaker, Fassbinder's work often featured explicit depictions of homosexuality, something that might not have been possible without Bogarde's groundbreaking role in Victim in the early 1960s. After his collaboration with Fassbinder, Bogarde acted only 4 more times, twice in films and twice on television. In 1981, he earned a Golden Globe nomination for portraying Roald Dahl in the Patricia Neal story. His last film role, as Jane Birkin's father in Bertrand Tavernier's Daddy Nostalgia the 1990, received critical acclaim. Bogarde was known for his irreverence and his willingness to tackle taboo subjects. His motivation wasn't to shock, but to explore the hidden complexities of human nature. He chose roles that reflected his artistic integrity and sharp intellect, working with visionary directors such as John Schlesinger, Alain Resnais, and Bertrand Tavernier during the final decades of his career. After retiring from acting, Bogarde focused on writing. By the time of his death in 1999, he had authored 6 novels and 10 memoirs, as well as essays, reviews, and journalism. His writing, much like his acting, was celebrated for its wit, detail, and emotional depth. Starting with his first memoir, A Postilion Struck by Lightning, Bogarde published 15 best-selling books, all praised for their intelligence and humor. In 1984, DIRK Bogarde became the first British person to serve as president of the jury at the Cannes Film Festival, a significant honor. Earlier, in 1982, he was made a Chevalier de l'Ordre des Arts et des Lettres, and on February 13, 1992, he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. However, his life was marked by personal and health struggles. In 1988, after the death of his longtime partner, Anthony Forwood, Bogarde was devastated. Around the same time, he suffered a major stroke during heart surgery, leaving his health permanently affected. A heavy smoker for much of his life, his recovery was limited. During this difficult period, Bogarde started reviewing books for The Telegraph at the suggestion of literary editor Nicholas Shakespeare, who, according to Bogarde, unknowingly provided much-needed support. In 1996, he experienced another stroke, which left him partially paralyzed. Despite this, he regained enough independence to live on his own in his Chelsea flat. By May 1998, his health had declined to the point where he required constant nursing care. This led him to create a living will, specifying that no extraordinary measures should be taken to prolong his life if he became terminally ill. Bogarde became a strong advocate for voluntary euthanasia and served as vice president of the Voluntary Euthanasia Society, openly discussing his own decision to forego life-saving interventions. Ultimately, his living will was not needed. Bogarde passed away from a heart attack on May 8, 1999, at his Chelsea home. His family honored his wishes for a private funeral with no memorial service, respecting his desire to be forgotten. The day before his death, he spent time with his friend, Laurent Bacall. His ashes were scattered at his former estate, Le Pigeonnier, in Grasse, southern France. Writing in The Guardian on May 10, 1999, Margaret Hinksman described Bogarde as probably the finest, most complete actor on the screen, when working with directors he trusted, such as Joseph Losey, Luchino Visconti, and Alain Resnais. Bogarde's success as a film actor was rooted in his unique connection with the camera. He believed the actor's gaze, the look, was more important than perfect line delivery in film acting. His gaze, along with his dedication to meaningful roles, set him apart. Today, there is no one quite like DIRK Bogarde, a remarkable actor who, despite a brief Hollywood career, remains one of the finest of his era. Welcome to our channel. Today, we will learn about the life of Jack Wilde, an English actor and singer. Jack Wilde was a beloved actor in Hollywood, known for his charm. His fame made his tragic story all the more disturbing. From the 1960s to the 2010s, he cultivated a charming youthful image that brought him fame. Unfortunately, fame can be unpredictable, and he experienced its ups and downs. He struggled with unhealthy habits from a young age, starting to use nicotine at the age of 12. On the plus side, he also pursued some healthier hobbies. At the age of 11, Jack and his brother Arthur got their big break playing rugby with Phil Collins. Phil's mother, June Collins, a theatrical agent, approached the boys and invited them to attend the Barbara Speake Theatre School. They agreed, but not out of a genuine love of acting. They were initially uninterested in the profession. The brothers were skeptical, focusing mainly on delivering milk to support their family. They were encouraged to pursue show business because it could bring better financial rewards. Despite their initial doubts, acting soon became more than just a job for them. Although Jack would later become famous, his early performances were not well received. In 1964, he and his brother appeared in Oliver, a West End production of Oliver Twist. Wilde auditioned several times for the role of the Artful Dodger, but was deemed too short and was cast as Charlie Bates instead. His brother eventually got the part of Oliver. Despite this setback, Jack made an important discovery during this time. At the age of 12, he met Gaynor Jones, another young actor at the same theater school. Although he left school 2 years later, he was fortunate enough to meet her again in 1970, and they married 6 years later. By the time he got married, Jack's career was taking off. In 1968, after a few smaller television roles, he auditioned for the lead role in Carol Reed's adaptation of Oliver. However, he was too old for the lead role. Instead, he finally got the role he had long wanted, the Artful Dodger. Even though he was cast, he was still not as tall as his co-star Mark Lester, who played Oliver. The reason was that he was still shorter than Lester. To solve this problem, the filmmakers provided him with special shoes to make him appear taller. Jack Wilde received more support than just on-screen. His height also posed challenges off-screen. Like most actors, he had his own chair to use backstage. However, due to his small stature, the carpenters built him a custom high chair that read Dodger Jack. Jack was very good at building lasting friendships with everyone he met. He developed a special bond with Ron Moody, who played Fagin in Oliver. Moody shared that they often called each other by their character names and likened their relationship to Laurel and Hardy. Even after the film was released, Jack continued to receive recognition. Although he was not the main star, he was nominated for 3 awards, including an Oscar, and at just 16 years old, he became the 4th youngest person in history to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor, despite not winning any awards. Even before the ceremony began, Jack Wilde felt a warm sense of admiration. Thanks to the global success of Oliver, the United States was excited about his appearance. While in Los Angeles for the Academy Awards, Jack was delighted to see a billboard that read, "Hollywood welcomes Jack Wilde." However, the welcome he received was not as warm as he had expected. Although audiences praised his performance as the Artful Dodger, he did not win the award that night. Even the other nominees expressed sympathy for him. The actor who won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor that year, Jack Albertson, publicly stated that he believed Jack deserved the award and even apologized to him during the ceremony. At the same time, Jack had the opportunity for an even more significant moment at the Oscars. Since acting was not his only talent showcased in Oliver, he was invited to perform with famous artists such as Frank Sinatra. Jack was asked to sing a song written by Henry Mancini, but he firmly refused because he did not want to learn another song. However, this was not the end of his time in the spotlight. The glamour of Hollywood had captivated Jack, and he had no idea what challenges awaited him. In 1969, Jack Wilde began his career in NBC's H.R. Pufnstuf, a quirky series about a boy who finds himself on a mysterious island. The show lasted for one season and led to a movie, which greatly increased Jack's fame and wealth in America. However, he became frustrated with being typecast. Because of his youthful appearance and modest height, he was constantly offered roles as a boy, even as he got older. He later expressed his discomfort at being offered the role of a 13-year-old when he was already 21. Fortunately, acting was not his only passion. Like many actors, Jack explored other avenues. From 1970 to 1972, he signed with Capitol Records and Buddha Records to launch his music career. During this time, he released 3 albums and 3 singles, of which Some Beautiful was his most popular song. By the mid-1970s, Jack Wilde had become a household name both in his homeland and in the United States. His charm, rising star appeal, and versatile talent made him a beloved icon among young actors, alongside Barry Williams and David Cassidy. The media dubbed him a teenage heartthrob, a title he embraced. At the height of his career, Jack Wilde had everything he wanted. By the age of 20, his roles in Oliver and H.R. Pufnstuf had made him a millionaire. He wore tailored suits, dined at the finest restaurants, never drove, and could get whatever he wanted. He seemed to have reached the pinnacle of success, but that also meant he had a long way to go. Despite his early fame as a child star and teen heartthrob, Jack struggled to maintain his relevance as he grew older. The film and television industry was unsure of how to cast him, leading to fewer job offers and increased periods of unemployment. This downturn marked the beginning of a difficult period in his life. With fewer acting opportunities, Jack turned to alcohol. He admitted that without a job, he spent all his time drinking, leading to a cycle of excessive drinking, vomiting, and blackouts that lasted for decades. Even when he managed to get a job, he made sure his car trunk was stocked with new bottles of booze. In his quest for fulfillment at the bottom of the bottle, he found only loneliness. His drinking alienated his friends, and despite his wife's pleas for him to quit, he ignored her concerns. The only people left in his life were those who paid him, unable to dissuade him from his destructive habits. Jack's irresponsibility extended to many aspects of his life. The wealth he had accumulated as a young man did not help him manage it properly. Initially, he was generous in buying houses and cars for his family members, but soon his money was spent mainly on alcohol. Even when he ran out of money and was unemployed, he applied for unemployment benefits just to buy more drinks. However, he risked losing more than just money. By the late 1970s, his excessive drinking had taken a serious toll on his health. After seeing a doctor, he was diagnosed with acute pancreatitis, which was directly caused by his drinking. The doctor warned him that if he continued, the condition could be fatal. Although Jack Wilde took this advice, he did not fully adhere to it. He struggled with addiction throughout his life, trying to fight it. When told to stop drinking completely, he chose to cut out hard liquor, but this decision did not last long. He went through periods of sobriety, even staying sober for 9 months at one point, but a negative event caused him to relapse. The consequences of his reckless lifestyle left him with pancreatitis and multiple hospital stays, with his health deteriorating and culminating in a cardiac arrest. Fortunately, he survived, but his challenges were not over. Despite repeated physical injuries and serious health problems, Jack ignored numerous warnings about his condition. His heart stopped beating 2 more times in the following years, and he was diagnosed with diabetes in 1983. In addition, his mental health began to decline. While rehearsing for a pantomime in 1985, he began to hallucinate, believing that East End thugs were after him. He felt terrified and worried that his heart would stop again, and that this time he would not survive. He was eventually admitted to a hospital under the Mental Health Act. However, he remained resigned to his addiction and, unlike many others in similar circumstances, did not seem to mind the idea of seeking help. In the mid-1980s, Jack Wild sought out a clinic for alcoholics and drug addicts, aiming to overcome his problems with alcohol. Unlike some other celebrities with similar problems, Jack did not condone his harmful habits. He was careful about drinking and smoking in public, knowing that many young fans looked up to him. As if his troubles were not enough, another blow came when he faced a personal loss that threatened to push him even further down the rabbit hole. After a tumultuous 9-year marriage, his wife filed for divorce in 1985, a decision that Jack later realized was largely due to his drinking. However, this setback eventually prompted him to change his life. By the late 1980s, Jack felt he had hit rock bottom. After losing his job, his money, and his marriage, he finally decided to take a different path. In 1989, he joined an alcoholics support group and achieved lasting sobriety. Fortunately, Jack's career was not completely over, although it did not regain its former glory. He returned to what he loved most, performing for audiences. By 1991, he had starred alongside Kevin Costner in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and landed several television roles. In addition to these opportunities, he returned to his roots in stage acting. Although he did not have many roles on screen, he was happy to return to the medium that had first inspired him. Along with a number of smaller roles, he was cast as the Cowardly Lion in the London production of The Wizard of Oz. Jack had a unique talent for stage acting, and in his early years, he became known for his incredible pantomime skills. Now, many years later, he has showcased his talents in productions such as Aladdin and Jack and the Beanstalk. As the good news continued to come, a pivotal event led to something even more meaningful. While working on Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack met Claire Harding. She initially thought he would be arrogant, but to her surprise, she quickly developed feelings for him. They were together for the next 10 years. However, Jack could not escape his past forever. Despite his impressive efforts to overcome his addiction, his health suffered. Tragically, in 2001, he was diagnosed with oral cancer, a disease he had never known about. Although he did not want to focus on his illness, he fought it fiercely, which required making some difficult decisions. Jack's long battle with cancer was fraught with significant hardship. After undergoing an unsuccessful course of chemotherapy, he faced a difficult operation in 2004 that resulted in the removal of both his tongue and larynx. Although the operation left him speechless, Jack continued to strive to do good in the world. He often refused to acknowledge his illness and did not consider himself unwell, but he was certainly affected by his condition. One positive outcome of his struggle was that he supported others in similar situations. He became a passionate advocate for Cancer Research UK. Wild also never let his illness interfere with his passion for entertainment. Even in the later stages of his difficult battle, he returned to the stage to perform, although all his roles were non-speaking. Of Jack's later career, one particularly memorable silent role stands out. His portrayal of Baron Hardup in the 2005 Worcester production of Cinderella was so well received that the character was adapted to suit his abilities. He performed the entire role through silent acting, earning widespread acclaim. Jack's last on-screen appearance was in 2005, when his health was failing, and he was cast in the low-budget horror film Muscles and Chips. Although he continued to play the role without dialogue, he was happily reunited with Ron Moody, the actor best known for playing Fagin in Oliver, and they shared the screen again. After a decade together, Jack and Claire Harding cemented their loving relationship by marrying in the fall of 2005. His wife noted that their decision to marry had nothing to do with his illness. It stemmed from their genuine commitment to each other. As Jack approached the end of his life, he reflected on his past. and realized that his excessive use of nicotine and alcohol had led to significant regrets and a path of destruction. However, he felt that this was inevitable, believing that something in his genes would eventually lead him down this path, no matter what. Despite undergoing chemotherapy and surgery, Jack was unable to overcome his cancer. Sadly, he passed away in March 2006 at the age of 53, spending his final moments at home. He was beloved by his co-stars and family, and was honored at the 79th Academy Awards. Jack Wilde was a cherished figure who deeply inspired those who knew him, as well as many others who admired him from afar. While there is some debate about whether this song is about Malcolm McLaren, many believe that it inspired Morrissey's song, Little Man, What Now? The song highlights how the child star had a significant impact on audiences, despite being relatively unknown. Jack is determined to prevent young people from imitating his lifestyle and to warn others in similar situations. In the early 2000s, he wrote a heartfelt letter to Daniel Radcliffe, who had just landed the role of Harry Potter. In the letter, he congratulated Radcliffe and advised him to avoid the mistakes he had made. However, all stories eventually come to an end. We hope you enjoyed our exploration of Jack Wilde's life. That's it for this episode. Thank you for joining us.